open. I will entertain a motion to approve actually, we don't have.
We don't have them for this evening. We'll have
That's
to
right.
approve them next night.
Table that. And our first public hearing is Scotland and Maple Street, and I will read that into the record before we get started. Under the Wetland Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40 of Mass General Law is amended, and the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission Stormwater Management Regulation. The Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing January 7th, 2020 at 6:30 in the McDonald Brown Conference Room, 65 North Main Street, for notice of intent filed by Jacob Driscoll Engineering on behalf of Cohesive Development for a subdivision of 2 vacant parcels on Scotland and Maple Streets into 44 residential lots and associated infrastructure. And green cards, and we're open.
Okay. Just one point, I think, you mentioned the stormwater.
Yes, bylaw. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's a local bylaw, right?
Yes.
So it's been 40 years, it's not.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so Greg Driscoll of Jacobs Driscoll Engineering here tonight, representing Chester Developers. From Chester Developers here tonight is Richard Hashem and Owen Kelly. So the proposed project is a 40B project, affordable subdivision. Proposing to subdivide 2 vacant parcels into 44 residential lots, and these lots will be 28 single-family homes and 64 duplex units.
How many duplexes?
Nope, those 28 single-family homes.
And duplexes, how
How
many?
many duplexes?
64 duplex units. So 32 duplex buildings. The site is located on the easterly side of Scotland Street in West Bridgewater. Property is surrounded by single-family dwellings on here and conservation land to the back. That was, that's town-owned land. The site is located in the general residential and farming zoning district. And we had filed an ANRAD for this project back in 2016, I believe. That was approved, and we've extended it. So this is the notice of intent filing for the project based on those that ANRAD that locked down the the resource areas. So none of that has changed. This is all based off that. The design is all based off of the ANRAD that was filed back then. So the project will consist, as I said, of those housing units. We're proposing to improve Maple Street up to this intersection.
What page are you on there?
This right here is
in front of it.
I've got it here, I just wanted to make sure
this is a one-off that I printed tonight that kind of shows everything.
okay, all right.
I think in the PDF you have, maybe sheet 3 shows everything. So we have a couple of cul-de-sacs down on the southerly end of single-family homes. Some more single-family homes at the southern cul-de-sac in this area, and then duplex units with a green area to the north.
Where's the sewer system going?
Should I answer questions?
Can we hold the questions until he finishes presentation?
So for proposed wetland protection, we're going to have perimeter erosion control of straw wattles, soil stockpiling areas with protection around them, concrete washout areas, construction entrances for both areas, and also silt sacks and any catch basins out in Scotland Street to protect from silt trucking into the road and getting to the drainage system of the road. And that's really the quick overview of the project. Everybody's pretty much familiar with it. We submitted a drainage report as well, which I'm sure will be looked at by an engineer, and we'll have comments to respond to on that. This being the first hearing, we don't have any feedback on the drainage yet. Just quickly, the There are several drainage areas proposed. Um, so there's a stormwater basin down in this area, one right here at this intersection. We have a large one back in here, abutting this wetland area, and another one back in here. We also have a wetland replication area that's shown right here. We're filling about 1,000 square feet of wetlands to get up to the knoll area and replacing with about 1,500 square feet of replication. So, anything else? But that's about the overview of the project.
All right, John?
Just for everybody's understanding, you have a filling of some part of the floodplain, and you should probably point out where that is on your plan, that you're
That's good.
doing compensatory storage.
Sure. So this blue line right here is the 62.3 elevation line, which is the flood elevation.
100-year
The
flood.
100-year flood elevation shown on the FEMA maps. So there's a couple areas in here that we're doing a little bit of filling, and then this area right here, and this open space parcel is where we'll be replacing any areas that gets filled. We're replacing the volume of flood storage right in there.
Okay. And the purpose for filling into the floodplain on the far right of your drawing is for what?
A detention basin,
Is what?
a stormwater basin. This area right here, that's a
Oh.
stormwater basin right
Does
there.
it include the roadway going out?
Yeah, well, we're not grading that, like bringing that up. We're not filling that to bring that up and affecting the flood storage there.
So during
We
a
gravel
flood,
at the
you're not
surface.
going to be able to get out to that area?
That's Yeah.
correct.
Is that a septic area?
Yeah.
All right, so I notice you show a septic area to the far left of the
Yep.
sheet,
Up in here.
and then you don't show anything on the other area.
Yeah, I have that area roughed out. I'll add that to the plan. We know what the size of the system needs to be. The septic systems aren't designed yet.
They aren't designed.
Okay. We have them sized, we know what we need to do. But
We'll need to see that. By the way, do you have a file number yet on this?
I did not receive an email.
Okay, no file number, okay. The round of test pits that you've recently done out there, what did you determine to be the water table in the area of the units that are to the rear of the Scotland Street current homes?
Over in here?
Well, both sides.
Oh. I'd have to look that up.
Anywhere between 30 and 42 inches.
All right, and how far above the seasonal high water table are you planning to keep those units? Cellar floors.
Well, I keep them out of the foot.
So how much of a,
About a foot.
about a foot?
Yeah.
So it's important to know what those seasonal high water tables are along there. Have you done a number of test pits in those areas where the foundations are going, or you're going to interpolate where you think the water table might be?
We have soil testing for the individual septics that will be in these areas.
So you didn't answer my question.
Sorry.
Are you proposing to do test pits where the foundations of these units are going to be? Not where
We're not.
the proposed septics will be?
We're not, because the septic, there's like 4 holes on each lot. And each lot is pretty small. So we have a pretty good determination. We have a pretty good idea of where the water table is on each lot. because like I said, you know, like each lot is like about, let's say.
30 inches, let's say?
Yeah.
All right, if you could just pick one of those, Greg, and take a look at what the existing contour is in one of those, at one of those units.
Yep.
Subtract out the 30 inches, call that your seasonal high water table, come up 12 inches, and then you're gonna have full cellars?
Yes.
Come up 7.5 feet, tell me what the top of foundation would be, approximately.
We would base the,
Above the existing grade?
we base the, you know, the grades of the road and everything on having systems out front, having the fill and everything up enough to,
Well, I thought you had a common septic system in the circle.
for these units.
Okay, so the units that you're,
These units have
Out front.
Individual system.
individual systems.
And the plan is to have a complete walkout in the back of the basement. and
does it
have-
show that on the plan?
Not yet, we haven't gotten to the detailed grading of each individual lot.
So the
Yet,
reason
so we
I'm,
have the.
okay, I'm
the
not
road.
gonna belabor any more about, you know, any more on this topic, but the point that I'm trying to make is that these lots are gonna have to be filled, in my opinion, more than what you're showing on this plan when you get to the final design. And therefore, that's gonna shed water to the back of the existing homes along Scotland Street. And you're gonna need to be able to provide, because it's part of the drain system now, when you're directing that water down to that basin on the far
Yeah,
left,
we have a swell going on here.
that's gotta be accurate. It can't be approximate, it can't be something that you've made some assumptions on right at the moment. I think it needs to be precisely designed to protect the residents that are on Scotland Street so they don't get runoff from the raised development of this site. So I can't recommend that the commission can approve your plan until you're able to provide that information, and not approximate. I think it needs to be accurate, so that we would need to know what the water tables are, what the finished basement floor is gonna be, and what the finished grade is going to be for the lot. And if a swale needs to be designed to handle all of that runoff, to direct it to that detention basin, then that would protect the owners. We know that the newer houses on Scotland Street from Maple Street towards the river have been pumping water, and they're raised. You know, you can drive down the street and see how high they sit up, and they still have water in their basements, or have had water in their basements. So this is why I believe, and the only reason that I think we have some jurisdiction in this, even though it's outside the 100-foot buffer, is that it's connecting your drain system. So we want to make sure that all of that is accurate. All right? That's one thing. Where is the turtle nesting site?
It's gonna be where the old model plane airport was, which is, I believe, in this area.
So, I know the developer was instrumental in making sure that that area of 110 acres plus was made into conservation land and is now part of the town-owned land. But I don't understand why the turtle nesting site was put into the model airplane club.
Before we deeded over the parcel of land, we made it subject to the permit with easement on it.
So, that's gonna be an issue with the model airplane people. So, we're gonna have to work around that, and I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out for both the model airplane club and the town, but we'll have to address that. But that was all done
Right.
before the conveyance of the land.
Correct.
Okay? When do you propose to submit septic plans to the Board of Health?
In the next couple months.
Okay.
Uh,
All right, and then I guess the last concern I have is that during the zoning Board of Appeals process, there was a consultant working for the town that did a preliminary review of the site for drainage and stormwater purposes, and this is substantially different now, so I'm going to recommend that we hire a 53G consultant to go through the drainage calculations and the drainage design. There are areas where there's catch basins on just one side of the road and not the other, that kind of thing. They may have some comments about that for safety purposes during winter, having sheet flow across the roadway and in the driveway areas. And so we'll let a 53G consultant take a look at that, but
He look at the entire project in terms of
just the drainage and the stormwater.
some of the items you addressed tonight.
Some of the site plan issues, you
Yeah.
know, where light poles are gonna be, that kind of thing, that's not really up to us to be involved with.
Right.
For the record, the impervious surface area, the impact on the drainage is less now with this proposal than the original
With the ZBA?
ZBA, correct?
I'll ask, because I know it's going to be a question that everybody's going to ask. It looks like the elevation change ranges anywhere from 3 to 6 feet across the site proposed.
That's about right.
I mean, is that about
That's about right.
what we're looking at? Okay. But I know that's going to be one question, so I'll get that answered now. Anybody else have any other questions?
It leads to John's comments tonight about a
Right.
more detailed review of the runoff and so forth.
My other question is, with the amount of open space that's on this plan, and this is just a suggestion, not that we have much we can do about it, but putting 92 units into this project, you're going to have a lot of kids, I'm thinking, that are going to need a place to be, and not in the street, and not in the wetlands, and not all over the countryside. I would seriously think of seeing what you could do for any type of athletic, basketball, soccer fields, anything that could be utilized. I know the town went and put in the skate park behind the fire station in one of their wetland retention ponds. I don't know, that's something that could be talked with the town to see if something could be put out there for recreation and maintenance areas. Just,
This is, although this is not age restricted, 55 and older, it is age targeted. Reason being, all these units, the duplexes have first floor master bedroom, which appeals to empty nesters. And as you see, I mean, it is not conducive to having children on such a small yard. However, I'm sure there will be some families that will be purchasing, but from our experience in other development communities, it's a much reduced ratio. But we will consider your proposed suggestion.
all right. Any commissioners, any other questions?
Not at this
All right. Yes. Nick?
Are you going to have wells, or is it going to be town water?
Town.
So are we going to be allowed, on Scotland Street, where we live there, are we gonna have the access to the town water then? Because our water probably is going to be polluted if there's going to be a sewer system right behind my house.
So you must live on the part where the newer homes were
Yeah.
built, where the water line
We
had to
don't
go?
have a well. I would like,
As part of
I don't have town water, sorry.
our approval process, we're supposed to extend you the water line up to your property line.
Okay, and who's gonna pay for me to get,
Pardon me?
who's gonna pay for me to have access to the town water?
I don't know.
So
Bring it in,
it's-
So
because I'm
you'll-
gonna have to have water.
Town water. One question. So we don't understand, based on the current map that you provided, how big that septic is. and coming from Lakeville prior to West Bridgewater, you have to be 100 feet away from a well just for a normal leaching field.
That's correct.
Right? And so, if you're within those limits,
Cannot do it.
right, you can't do it just for a regular leaching field.
Right.
What I'm hearing is that this is gonna be much larger. And we know that they have to pay for tie-in costs. Even if you pipe the town water to them, they still have to pay those tie-in costs, because you've potentially built a leaching field that is now contaminated or within that leachate, right, of their wells. So it doesn't sound appropriate drainage-wise that they would incur additional costs to tie in when you've contaminated their drinking water with E. coli.
If I might
Thank you.
clarify here, or ask a question. You have a well, and you're only obligated to extend to her property, or all of
What we're
them?
obligated to
all
do
have
is
wells.
extend,
On that side.
The main line.
So,
if everybody on this side has wells,
yeah,
okay? And the water line ends here, the water,
Okay, yep.
okay? So what we're doing is we're extending the water pipe to their property line,
So all of those
from
six-
here to here.
Okay.
Now, to answer your question,
Yeah.
we have no right, nor are we permitted to build any septic systems, large or small, within 100 feet of the well.
Okay.
And that is regulated also by the state. And that it takes into account making sure that no well gets contaminated by E. coli and all of that. And we're not doing any septic system within 100 feet of any well.
So,
Regardless of size, because there's
Regardless of
different
size.
limits. There's
Small,
different
big, large,
feet
it's
limits
not-
Right,
for
we're gonna be with
leaching.
all the
Right,
regulations.
okay.
So that
so if I understand it correctly, you're providing water availability
Correct.
if the well is not contaminated and the owner wishes to continue using the well, they don't have to tie in.
Correct.
If the well becomes contaminated for any reason, whether it's from a septic system, which according to the state law, anything 100 feet beyond the well is not considered to be a hazard to that drinking water. But should something happen, then they could tie in.
Correct.
Okay.
And who's gonna pay for that?
Pardon me?
Who's gonna pay for it to be tied in?
Well, I would say that you would be as the homeowner, but if it's something that they didn't create an issue with,
But what if they did?
then
You would
you'd
have to prove, we
you'd
would
have
have
to
to
prove it.
prove that it's beyond reasonable,
Yeah.
Okay.
which leads to my second question.
Go ahead.
We don't know the exact elevation of the property that abuts all of our homes, so that we can determine whether or not that grading, that raised elevation, which could be anywhere from 3 to 6 to, let's be honest, 20 feet, to get up to above where it's flooding now, is gonna cause an unreasonable, right, according to mass law, flooding of my property. And so, how can this be approved without those?
We're
I
not.
think
We're
John
not.
That's what I
asked,
brought
he
that up.
answered
Yeah.
that question.
We can't let them,
This
let
is what
them-
these people's job is, to make sure
Yeah.
that we don't do
And
that.
it's the public's job to double check
Sure
that.
that
Yeah,
matters.
we-
And that's why John had questioned the plans needing to be updated to give us accurate final,
They'll be forthcoming.
so that at some point between now and the time the septic system's approved, we will have a completed set of plans that will have the septic system and all those elevations, as well as the final drainage calculations and heights,
Yeah.
so that we can actually make a
So
informed decision on where we
That
go.
PERC test was done, like, when the season was, we were the driest possible. Is there any way we can do another PERC test when, like, it hasn't, when it's
Course.
actually rained?
according to Title V, the PERC test can be done any time of the year
Mhm.
because the existing water table that you would find in July isn't necessarily what we call the design water table. It's the estimated seasonal high water table, which is defined by the coloration in the soil. And it's a soil science type application that's been proven over the years to be accurate. So that's why they allow PERC tests to be done throughout the year instead of just during the so-called wet season.
Two things. First of all, that end of the field it's usually underwater. Those people's houses, backyards are underwater. So I can't agree with what you're saying there. And second thing is some of the people may not remember, but a couple of years ago, they put so much sludge on that field that it changed the color of your soil, and there's no, you can't tell me that it didn't. It was supposed to be put down at a minimal thickness, and it was put down to look like a concrete pad out there.
Feet
Yeah.
thick. Yeah.
Okay, so you can't tell me that that didn't change the color of your soil samples. My family farmed that field for 100 years.
So did mine.
Same family.
And where is your 3 to 6 feet gonna be? Roughly, you're gonna be 6
Well,
feet down this end, 3
We're
feet?
not prepared to answer that now.
Okay.
We will answer it before any
Subsequent hearing.
decision.
Yes.
There's a drainage ditch scheduled behind my house, no, way over in the corner, 20 Scotland. Right?
Goes
Yeah,
up
they
all the way.
got-
Mhm.
My house is already underwater, and when we walked out there, all of us, we were sinking in mud. Now you're gonna run more water in that area. My septic is right at the back of my property. How are you gonna guarantee you're not gonna ruin my septic system?
The swale's gonna be lower than your property, so the water's gonna hit the swale and then drain this way out towards the wetland.
Okay, so you're gonna bring the water towards the conservation area?
Correct.
Okay.
It's gonna go this way. So
That's why we're so concerned about the preciseness of this, so that we can
Thank you.
try
we
to.
can't do any grading work on your property, so that's a,
No,
it's a set
we
point.
just
So
wanna
from
make sure
there,
that you're bringing your water.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
sure.
so
For
from
where?
there,
That's
the
a
property
fair-
line, I can
fair
make it
point.
deeper and
Fair point.
pull the water away.
Right. I
Yeah,
get that.
that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Yes?
Two questions. You made a comment at the beginning that you're going to do improvements to Maple Street. And that's obviously gonna change the drainage, because right now it's a dirt road in front of my property, which on assessor's map is 71 Maple Street. So can you tell me a little bit about how much impervious, like, you're paving, how wide? Right now it's a dirt road, obviously, that is
Yeah, it's gonna
standing
be
water on it.
24 feet wide, it's gonna have a sidewalk.
How wide?
5.
24?
24 feet wide? With
Normal road.
No, yeah.
24 feet wide.
So it's gonna be wider than Scotland Street.
It's good, so, right, so it's gonna be wider than Scotland Street, so how much of my land then are we taking, do we know?
We're not taking any land, we're working within the right of way of Maple Street.
We're not gonna, nobody's gonna take away your land.
Are you bringing that up?
Don't know.
We are grading it to.
Grading. With a
There's a high point about 100 feet in.
Yeah. So we have a high point right here,
16.
and then the water will go a little bit towards Scotland Street.
So the water will be running towards Scotland Street?
A little bit, just this
Just-
section
just
right
a
here,
little
but the
bit,
rest of
right.
this is all gonna go into here.
Right now, that whole track, that's
So
gonna go
it's-
right in here, that water's gonna go right into the top of the road.
Right into my house?
That's where it goes right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. Yeah, it's gonna get a lot worse when that's done.
Well, we have to provide calculations showing that we're not gonna send any more water there than it goes currently.
Well,
And that's
There's
what we're
always
doing.
water
What you
in the
should be doing is
basement.
helping that you're gonna bring it away.
One thing
And then
to
we
keep
have
in mind,
a drainage system here, collect the water and put it in.
The drainage system, okay.
so are you putting curbing on the street?
Yes.
What kind of curbs?
Is that berm? Yeah, that's.
Is it a Cape Cod berm?
Yep.
Okay, so theoretically, the water stays within the pavement because of the berms on either side of the road.
Cape Cod is
The
dirt.
issue that I see, and I'm gonna ask the engineer that the commission will hire, is whether there should be some catch basins right at Maple Street to collect what's on Maple Street. And after all, we do have quite a few storms that are close to a 100-year storm, even though theoretically that shouldn't happen, but we do get quite a few, especially with some of the changes to our climate. We tend to get more rainfall. So I'm concerned about coming off of Maple Street onto Scotland Street and affecting the other properties in that area. So we may want to see a catch basin at that intersection.
Should be actually on Maple Street,
Yes.
right? Not
Yeah.
before it comes up.
So it would collect everything coming down, so it wouldn't run onto those properties.
Is there a sidewalk at each side?
There is sidewalk on the southerly side.
That would be the right side going in.
Right side going in.
No, yes.
Right side.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep. What do you got?
I just, a clarification, so that blue line that you were talking about is the 100-year floodplain?
100-year,
The base
100-foot
flood,
buffer.
Buffer.
So the blue line is a 100-foot buffer from the
Wet.
No.
100-foot
This-
flood,
the orange line is the
100-year
buffer.
floodplain?
This is the
The blue
floodplain.
line is the flood.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So-
I
so-
stand
so-
corrected.
So my question is, if the blue line is the 100-year base flood zone,
Mhm.
and this is the question that I'm having for you, I thought you had to have a buffer footage from that 100-year flood, base flood.
No, there's no buffer from a flood line.
So,
Really? So
so,
only from a 10-year flood line?
could
Because
you, could
No,
you
it's
show
for
them?
the wetlands.
The wetland line.
Yeah.
This right here is
That's the main.
the flagged wetland line.
yeah, that
That's the
one
edge of the
I
bordering.
forgot.
This is the edge of the bordering vegetated wetland.
Mhm.
And this orange line is a 100-foot buffer from the bordering vegetated wetland, which is the jurisdiction of the board.
So could you show the couple of units that you're filling into the floodplain?
Right
So
here.
that area and that area is where they're filling the 100-year flood, and they can't do that without
Without putting it
compensatory
back.
storage.
We'll be doing it.
Right, it's just, I thought that the CFR stated that there was requirements, regarding the, 100-year flood-based floodplain for rivers.
Yes.
So that's what I was asking.
So there isn't a buffer to the flood limit line, which is that blue line. They can fill right up to that blue line, and where they're filling beyond it, they have to do compensatory storage, which they're
Explain why,
showing,
John.
which takes and gives back what they filled in. is
Right,
what
the
that-
compensatory, is that the compensatory storage?
Yes. So the town has a local bylaw that says you can't disturb within 50 feet of the wetland, but
Mhm.
this
Is 40B, so it doesn't apply,
40B trumps
right.
it, so, not to use, sorry, it usurps it. And so they are allowed to go within 50 feet, but they stay quite a bit out of it in almost all of the design, except for up on the northern end, I believe. So the turtle nesting site, they submitted, you'll see it in the documents that I put on the download for you, is part of this package. So we have to go along with that or approve it as part of the order of conditions eventually when we finish up with the process. The question, any more questions from the audience?
Where, I mean, our houses all, like, they were built, and they probably shouldn't have been built on Scotland Street. They already have water in them. I don't see how they're going to get away with this, and people are actually gonna buy houses. The houses that are already built on Scotland Street are new, and those houses have water in them. So how are they going to add more houses?
Is there any way there's gonna be less
It doesn't make
water?
any sense.
Once we see the plans, we can better
So
determine.
there's no way it'll ever work, because there's already a ton of water back there.
So, everybody knows this was a farm field, and it's in the ancient floodplain, which is now part of the watershed for the town river. floodplain soils tend to be very silty and poorly drained. And so that's why it makes good farmland, but you'll notice the farmer never went out there until late in spring, early summer. Or when they did, they got stuck if they went out sooner. So that's why it's so critical for the engineer to design the basement floors of these units a foot above the estimated high water table, determined based on the coloration of the soil, and that coloration is probably about 30 inches below the surface, so I don't think the sludge would have discolored it there.
Rolly algae buried at D3 out there.
I
It's still
bet.
there.
Is that the one that's out there?
Yellow.
So,
No.
Different one.
oh, a
No,
different one?
that relic should have been gone. You've given us 90 houses in the backyard, but they won't get rid of that relic, so we can at least have the good view for a little while. But Rolly algae walked to D3 out there in the 1950s, and it's
Wow.
still out there.
Wow. So, we really need to have that done, and that would address your concern, because if that were done for your houses,
There's
you
cracks
probably
all over
wouldn't
the
have that.
basement.
And you should go out there on that dike, find out what happened to that valve that's no longer there. Who knocked the valve under?
Okay.
There used to be a
Valve to
valve,
drain
there used to be a
that,
valve to drain that water, but
That canal,
Private
that canal.
natural filtration, but it might be.
So,
the Army Corps of Engineers put it in.
the question I have for the commission is,
Weird.
do we hire the consultant that we used the last time and get an estimate from them?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you hire, I don't think you hired a consultant.
Not for this project,
Oh,
but
I'm
for
sorry.
a different project, and
Yeah.
we were using the consultant Allen and Major. Any issue with that? We'll get an estimate of what
Yeah.
they feel it
That's
will
fine.
cost. So we'll take that up at the next meeting.
Do you want to get multiple?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I mean, we'll probably use whoever you choose, but if you don't mind, just to keep people honest, we can get 2 bids, is that all right?
Well, I think it doesn't require,
No, you're
it's
not-
not required by the procurement laws or anything,
That's
because it's a fee-based, professional fee-based type thing, but
That's fine.
the commission has to feel comfortable with who
Used
they're
them.
dealing with, so
That's
that
fine.
you just don't take the low bidder.
No, we don't anyways, but that's fine. It's just to keep, so they know that but that's fine. If it's fee-based, it's hourly based, then that's fine.
Okay.
you had another question?
Yeah, so, I'm still a little confused. So, do we have a mark on there for the 10-year floodplain versus the 100-year? Because right here it says, like, at least for the 10-year floodplain, that was my question, maybe it's a 10-year, not a 100-year, that it has to be 100 feet away. So that's, is there any way that you can just double check into that for our peace of mind?
Which section was it?
Let's see, section 10.57, land subject to flooding. 310 CMR, effective 10/24/2014. That's side thing. My original question, though, something that was brought up where he was mentioning that the gift of the 110 acres was contingent upon an approval for this project. So not just having that statement within this meeting brings up serious concerns for me as a property abutter about conflicts of interest.
The deed has been recorded, so it's not,
So I just,
No,
do
wait. You
understand?
misunderstood what I said.
Oh, that's why I'm
Let me
asking for
clarify.
clarification, because the statement
Let me
as it
clarify.
was
The
stated
gift-
was concerning.
There was an approval given by DEP,
Mhm.
not by the local conservation commission, nor by any local
Mhm.
agency. When we deed it over, making sure that we're not gonna fall into a trap where we have something approved by DEP, dictated by DEP to do.
Mhm.
When we deeded over that gift to the town, we made sure that this gift is subject to the is contingent upon, not contingent upon.
Get an easement back in order to do what
Right,
we need to do.
the approval from
Yes,
DEP, the approval given to us from DEP, the approval permit was listed in the deed that even though the town owns it, we have to make sure that the permit given by DEP for the turtle habitat is gonna be built by us according to that permit given by DEP, so that basically it is not quid pro quo, it's just that, I mean,
Yeah.
what it is actually, it's less of a gift to the town we had given, that we were, we've given them 110 acres minus the work we need to do on it. That's what it is.
Okay, and so when you, and
Does
so
that make
when,
it clear?
and so when you said it was contingent upon Conservation Commission
No, I
approval,
misspoke.
there's no.
It was contingent upon, not contingent upon, it's subject to the permit given by DEP.
Okay,
These people didn't commit to anything, nor was there any conversation with anybody.
It was at the other meeting.
Yeah, we were supposed to keep that, the airplane.
No, absolutely not.
We had, I thought
Well,
we had that
maybe
meeting
you
that we
guys
were going
agreed
do
to it, but as property owners, we actually put them on notice to vacate the property.
So we're gonna have to deal with that, because the license that the commission granted to them to be able to use that land may have to be modified now, because if it's gonna have a turtle nesting site within it, they're gonna have to probably change a little bit of their layout. But it is on town land, and the town is going to have to allow them to be able to build their turtle nesting sites, because it was conveyed subject to them being able to do that.
With the permit number in the
Right.
deed.
Right.
and then when, will we have another meeting for us to see the impact of that to the open
Oh, yeah.
space?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yep.
right now, of course, you walk out there as, to skim out bridge, so I'm assuming a turtle nesting site is not gonna be allowed to be walked on and usable for the general public, for the
Right.
town, so
Right.
it's, okay. Thank you.
Who's gonna tell the turtles down at the other end of the street to go down there?
We'll get it
We're gonna hold a seminar for
We'll
it.
get it there.
But the concerns for lots of people are the drainage to Scotland Street. That hasn't been addressed yet.
Absolutely,
And it will be, they'll be back, we'll all be here and look at it.
absolutely. And the more expert eyes will look at it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
From, the review engineer.
Yes.
When is this gonna start, this construction?
What are you hoping for? Best case?
Probably in early summer.
So early summer, the summer house.
Yes.
So as part of the drainage issues for the Conservation Commission, when they start building, are you gonna be building prior to the roadways and the drainage in?
No.
No.
Okay, so you're gonna make sure that all the appropriate drainage and everything, so that we don't have.
build until.
Just so we
Yeah.
know as property owners. Okay, thank you.
Till the roadway and the infrastructure's in, they
Right, okay,
can't,
just
yep.
run on.
Yes.
Okay.
I just have a concern for the property owners south of Maple Street. With the elevation you're going to be building up at the back of their property lines, that it's really going to flood all their backyards. And as it is now, without anything being done, the yards are flooded enough. So you really need to see and take into consideration those properties there that are going to have a proper buffer and a
Unless-
drainage system in place that will ease their pain.
Unless we demonstrate to everybody, to you, to the commission, and to the expert engineer, that this is not gonna happen. There's no permit, no.
We're not
commission
gonna
will
permit.
Pardon me?
We're not gonna permit it.
Exactly. The project will not go forward unless we demonstrate what your fear is addressed.
You're already talking about starting early summer,
Yes,
that's only a few months away.
correct.
So all this is gonna happen and be hopefully.
Yeah, by next meeting, we're gonna, I'm sure there's gonna be continuance, right?
Yes.
By next meeting, we're gonna provide that information.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I take a picture of how close
Take-
your new road is to my
Take
house?
any picture you want.
Oh, thank you. I
If you want,
appreciate
I'll
that.
stand.
I do. I do. Yeah, you can. That's fine. I'm all good with that.
2 weeks?
Well,
It's
Because,
short, but
right, I mean, the next meeting that we would have would be in 2 weeks, and that would be to decide on a 53G.
That's
do you think, so if we have you on the agenda to hire a 53G,
I'm sorry.
so if our agenda item is to discuss hiring the 53G for the price that they are quoting us, will you have some design plans ready by then, or should,
That's when do you think?
Are you putting sump pumps in all these units?
we're gonna try to keep them up high enough so they don't, but there's
Well,
no
when
guarantee.
my house was
Just
being
all
built,
around
I was
there.
guaranteed I wouldn't need one, so they run year round.
So there's not.
but-
And I'm up, they put me up to 16, 20 feet above the flood zone.
And I'm up.
To,
Revised plans,
fix my basement.
septic.
I have cracks all in my basement, and the house is only 7 years old.
Wow.
You should have built it.
And you shouldn't be building back there either.
Well, things like this can be overcome with proper engineering
Mhm.
expertise and study before things are done. But if something is done without any of that forethought, then you're gonna run into problems. And so what,
So those people didn't have to come before you?
Those
They-
people came before you too. That
Uh,
was allowed. That is,
the lots were
They
Form
didn't.
As,
yes, they did.
and the only one that did was, I believe, the far southerly one.
None of them are within the 100 feet.
Right, the very last one.
The very last
Well,
one
they
had
should've
to,
came
We had to do
before
some compensation for storage.
Yeah, that's what it says.
not everything comes before
Just
us.
the back corner on that
yeah,
one.
the back corner of that last lot had to come before us because they wanted to do some filling out there, and they had to do a compensatory storage area.
And these also all came before we had our local stormwater bylaw, so that didn't even apply to these either. So we still didn't get the oversight.
You'll notice that house is outside the 100-foot buffer of the wetland. See the orange line there? That's the 100-foot buffer. So the only jurisdiction this commission had was the fact that the engineer that laid out those lots was proposing filling part of the floodplain, and we wouldn't allow that until they did a compensatory storage area that would make up for what they were filling in. So that's the only approval that we could give on it. If we could have said something about the cellar at that time, you're darn tootin', I would have said something, but we didn't have the jurisdiction, so. They
Didn't
do
even come here.
kind of now, and as it relates to those drainage swales, beyond that, some of the other ones, I can't tell them to keep their.
When you're filling in water, the water has to go somewhere else. So it's going to go into our houses. I don't care how many drainage pumps you have. I'm telling you right, and you will be getting, there's going to be, no.
Would it be fair to say, John, after the calculations are done and the new drawings come up, that the water issues generally will be better managed than before?
Yes.
That's what I
Yep.
think, too.
Actually, it's been my experience, and I know these people are not going to be very suspicious of what I'm saying. It's been my experience of almost every subdivision that we have done. The water problem of the surrounding
Adjacent,
houses is less, because now you're channeling the water in a more organized way to go
Now
where
it's
it's supposed to.
And how
Now
many
it's
of those
just,
are built on the flood
Right,
zone?
and we're replacing
Pardon me?
soils.
And how many of those were built on the flood zone?
not flood zone, we're talking
Is there filling in
all
there?
How many
wet.
of your other ones have been
But
built on flood?
it doesn't matter, we have to.
It doesn't,
It
I'm
does
just
matter.
saying.
It does
the
matter.
water's-
Wait a
it's
minute,
a
wait a
water
minute.
problem.
Hold it, hold it.
Listen, we have to comply with the rules and regulations, with the stormwater management
Yeah,
bylaw.
but they're
We have to do it.
We understand that, but how
Okay,
many of the
so-
other ones were built with flood zones?
All of them have wetlands, all of them.
One's in Middleborough?
No, I never built in Middleborough.
All right, any more?
So on the new plans, will you state how many feet away, like, so you're gonna have the gradations, right, on the feet from my property line, right?
You'll
That-
see
right,
it all.
It's, right now, it's hard to see, like, there's some numbers like 63, but what is that 69.8
Elevation.
That's the elevations.
The elevate, thank you.
Is that a
Okay,
test?
sorry.
And those will be in more detail
Those are-
is
that's
the
what's
next.
gonna be, thank you, okay.
And-
Okay, the
Sorry.
answer to your question, Mr. Lilly, is, we will not have in 2 weeks those plans, we need 4 weeks.
Okay.
And you said the septic designs would be
In
done
4
in
weeks.
about 4 weeks?
Yeah.
For the, okay.
So in 2 weeks, if you'd like to have just a hearing to engage your consultant engineer, that's fine, and we'll attempt to,
He may bring up other questions that you haven't brought up here today. I don't know until I've looked at
Yeah.
all of them.
Well, my thought is that we really don't want to waste your money by having somebody look at these plans now.
I see.
So, but we do need to have someone on board. So using these plans as a guide for them to give us an estimate, we should be able to, within the 2 weeks, as long as we get an estimate back from them, hire a 53G to be on board, ready to go. Once the 3 weeks, 5 weeks down the road that some plans are more accurate, then I think we want to hand it over to them, not before that, because they could make all kinds of comments about this, and you've already changed them 2 weeks later. And then it's just a waste, basically. Waste of time for everyone to hear a report from the 53G and then know that the plans are going to be changed anyway.
Do you folks know what why we're hiring a 53G engineer? John will explain that.
The 53G it's a Mass General Law chapter that allows the Conservation Commission to hire a consultant to review the drainage, and the developer will provide us a fee to retain that consultant, and we draw upon that fund to pay the consultant, not the developer doesn't pay it direct. It has to go through the town. So the town doesn't spend the money, they just basically process the money and make sure that that there's enough money to pay for the 53G consultant. So that's what a 53G is. Sorry, I should have
But aren't
explained
they,
that.
John, aren't they, I mean, you certainly are capable of reviewing the calculations, but when they're complex projects, we get an independent engineer separate from all of us to look at it and get their input, and we come together and get an agreement. So it makes sense to get the independent, and there's no connection with anything.
Any other questions? If not, then I will entertain a motion to continue to our next meeting for the purposes of hiring the 53G.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Is that all in favor?
Aye.
And then after that,
We'll go on.
So that'll be the 21st at 6:30. We will discuss the cost of a 53G and vote, the commission will vote to hire that 53G or not. If they felt that it was ridiculous price or something, they could always say no. So that's the purpose of that meeting. You're free to come to it. There won't be any notifications. It'll always be posted on the town calendar, so the agenda has to be posted 48 hours before the meeting anyway. But keep checking that or call the conservation office. We can let you know what the status is. And I would anticipate meetings after 2 weeks from now that we will see substantial changes. But feel free to come at any time just to be able to keep updated and on top of everything.
So, in the day of technology, is there any way that the abutters can get access to the plans for review, just like you get access to the plans, so that we can come prepared with questions and I'm not kneeling in
You know what
front
we
of
will
their...
do? What we'll do is for the next meeting, we will upload this on the link, and we'll share everybody with the
Perfect.
link. So when you come
Thank
here, you can do that.
That would be greatly
So
appreciated.
everybody can access it electronically.
Yes, that would be greatly appreciated.
In the meantime, if you go onto the conservation webpage for the town, my email is there. Email me. I can give you a digital copy of what we have. It won't be the official one, obviously, but it'll be one that will be as up to date as we have.
Okay, thank you.
John, if I was able to twist these people's arms and get them working day and night, and we were able to get those plans finished by the next meeting, would that help with expediting with the 53 gentlemen?
I don't think so. I think what you provided us is probably a basis for them to be able to say that
It's gonna be X.
they should be able to accomplish what they need to do for a set figure.
Gotcha.
And whether you've got exact information or not, I don't think that'll help them do their pricing. And the reason I said we should have the accurate plans is we don't want them looking at these
Reviewing it
plans
twice.
and wasting time.
Sure.
So we'll wait to that point.
Sure.
Yes.
Now, subject to your approval of his plan, from there, does it go to planning board? Or does you guys say, okay, he can start digging?
There still will be a Board of Health will have to issue there, and they'll have to have a hearing or meetings on their septic design.
And I think their ZBA approval is subject to going back with the final plans that we approve.
Exactly.
Right.
After, then it goes back to the planning board. Zoning board.
So you still haven't gotten final approval from the zoning board?
We have the final approval from zoning board.
You have the final approval from the zoning
We
board?
do have the final approval from zoning board. But then, just like these,
But wasn't that final approval from your original plan?
right.
And that was contingent to 2
Right.
years for getting your shovel in the ground?
No.
Which was, yeah, it was, I was at the meeting.
No.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But they got an extension. in
And we did get extensions, but it was 3 years.
Extension.
I mean,
There was no meeting about an extension.
there's not a public hearing, but we did have a meeting.
There was a public meeting, but not necessarily a public hearing where all the abutters are notified.
That's nice.
That was
It's going to be
sneaky.
on the agenda.
Yeah, that's,
Can we, like, try to enforce that they have to pay for our town water to be, unless my water's polluted, and my children are
Even then, it
drinking
would be
And-
a,
And we couldn't even, we couldn't even enforce that. I mean, somebody else in town might be able to, but the commission can't.
You're gonna
You make an agreement with them and then they'll back out.
probably have to sue.
That's what you did with the fence, right? You said that you
Who
were gonna put
backed
a
out
fence
of
in
any
the back.
agreement?
Not even worth my breath.
Board of Health violation, and then you sue them.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my children are drinking the water in the water.
Yeah, you can go to my house, I'll
Thank you.
keep you.
Sorry, you saying you have polluted water?
No, I'm
No.
saying that if they put a sewer system behind my house, there's a good chance that the sewer is going to be leaking into our wells.
Not if it's 100 feet away. Because
I'll-
the state sanitary code says that if your well is 100 feet away from an
On
onsite,
wetlands?
on a
Not in the wetlands or flood.
onsite septic system, 100 feet away from a well is sufficient distance to prevent any contamination.
I still think that he should be paying for our well.
So regardless of paying for the well,
Our
the
wa-
the 100 feet though is not, does not, you and I both know it doesn't take into consideration standing flood water that's bringing up the groundwater level. The second you start raising the groundwater level, you're increasing leachate. I mean,
So if it was a shallow well, if
you
it's
know,
a shallow well, you could possibly be polluted with local groundwater fluctuation. But if it's a drilled well, it's into the bedrock, it's sealed where the casing of the well goes into bedrock. And the reason why the Title V says that it's efficient is that that can't contaminate the water around that well. You have a casing down to bedrock, it's sealed into the bedrock. And so the only thing that's going into that well is water that's coming through the cracks and veins of bedrock.
How deep is your
Shallow well,
well, just out
it
of
could-
curiosity, do you know?
yeah,
How deep
that's,
are our wells, do we know?
you have to look at it.
Usually they're about
Pretty deep,
195 to
yeah.
200.
I really just think that would make us a lot happier if it was tied into.
You could always get it tested just for your own.
I will have it tested.
Shouldn't be that
before and after.
expensive.
We
Yeah.
don't have that jurisdiction to be able to do that. Maybe the Board of Health or some other agency in town, but the commission can only protect the wetlands and stormwater.
So there must be a fear existing that when it's out there now that they're bringing the water to the property lines, that there must be some kind of an existing fear there that this may happen.
No, there wasn't.
No?
That condition was put on the permit by ZBA because of the butters voicing that concern. So out of compromise, we did that. But there are specific rules that say if your septic system is 100 feet or more from a well, it's safe.
Are you piping in gas lines as well, or?
Yes.
Oh.
It could be a silver lining for you.
No, we're not pipeline, not to.
He's not doing it for the houses. just
No,
for houses.
but I mean I'm asking if all the houses are gonna have piped gas lines. That means the gas lines to those, right? That's what you're saying, you're piping
That-
natural gas to all your houses that you're building, correct?
That's the plan.
The plan.
Working with gas company is not the easiest.
Right, but that's your plan, so if it happens, at least you're closer than Southdown for gas.
Right, yeah, they're much more likely to go 20 feet
More
with it
feet.
than they are to go 1,000 feet with it.
Yeah, sorry.
Unless you want to pay all the way.
Right.
Right.
Then they'll do
Sorry,
whatever
just-
you
Yeah,
want.
exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next hearing, we're gonna do the 53G consultant. And then at that point, we'll make a decision whether there's a new set of plans and how soon they'll be available so that we can review those, make our comments, and be able to have another public hearing such as this, where everybody can see those next set of plans. And hopefully, when we have the next meeting on the 21st, we'll be able to make that decision, whether it's gonna be the first Tuesday in February, or whether it's further out than that. But,
And I can take all the abutters who want to email me and put you in a group, and I can keep every one of you informed about this, but it's also important for you to keep an eye on the town calendar agenda, because I'm not infallible. And so I don't want to be blamed that you didn't get something. So between the two methods, you should be able to be up to date on what's
And
happening.
once we do the final plans, like I said, we're gonna upload them on
A link.
a link, and then we'll share that with
And
everyone.
we do it with all sorts of
With
QR
the-
codes and
Yeah.
Dropbox link and really easy for everybody to get. Yeah.
all right, then we will,
Thank you.
thank you.
2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
So it's 6:30?
6:30, yes.
Thank you.
And John, this is just the cover page uploaded when you send it to us, just an FYI for the turtle nesting one.
What happened?
I don't know, I tried to open it and all I got was the cover page. Is it just me or is it everybody else as well?
On what?
I didn't see it.
Jamie Pope.
It's in the second batch that John sent us.
My wife's a teacher.
Yeah.
So if you open up,
Did you wanna
I
give
bet
me?
your husband.
Yeah.
The second
yeah,
one,
you got a teacher and a police officer right next to you. Isn't that fun?
Well, but I was just gonna say that when the new plan comes up, it's
Well, yeah, I was just,
happy
I
to
think,
do
I
this.
think Crescent Street is up,
No,
so I
I'm
was.
sorry, it is in the first one.
Have it
I'm just
have
trying to
emails
remember where
with
it
your
was.
email address. I just didn't.
Yeah, it's
Thank
the
you.
second folder,
Oh, you're
Yeah.
23 at Yahoo.
2B Scotland Street, the 40B turtle nesting plan.
Did we lose the?
And maybe it was just me, but I opened it and the second page is white and there's nothing beyond
I
that.
think he's back there.
Okay, good. It's not just me, but there's a map and three other pages additional.
Is it like the
Can
one
we
over
do
in Lowe's?
the Eagle Scout?
My next or is there something between?
Yeah, there is something in between.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, good night.
And if, before we open the next hearing, if we could be indulged to have a little out of order, we have an Eagle Scout here to present a project and discuss with us, so I'd like to get him out so he can.
a proposal to get down near Ash Street, there's the conservation land. It's called Reynolds Landing. So a couple months back, I went down there, and if you look on my paper, the sign is it's clearly pretty old, and it's just kind of like weathered. So I figured that I could take it out, clear the area, and replace it with one that looks a lot more like the other conservation signs around town. So. Because at first look, you can't really even tell that this is owned by the town because it doesn't look like any of the other conservation signs. I feel like this would help.
Looks pretty old.
Now a little too.
Yeah, so
I know the yellow ones have held up well. I mean, they really haven't had much mold grow on, haven't faded, haven't needed a lot of water.
Oh, yeah. It's rotting.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the area out around the sign, take out the sign and replace it with one that looks similar to the rest of the signs, the conservation signs.
What's your time frame?
I'm probably going to start probably around early summer, maybe like late May, early June, somewhere around then.
Okay. And how soon do you need to have it completed?
I have until the end of the year.
Okay. I'm not sure whether your Eagle Scout was very close with, like, the time coming before we really had weeks or months to finish a project, and I just wanted to. All right, anybody have any other questions?
No, looks like a
No.
great idea.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
entertain a motion to approve the Eagle Scout project.
Make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adam, the Open Space Committee's meeting tomorrow night, were you planning to be there? Or?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, good.
What time is it?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
And it's either in this room or the adjacent room.
Yeah, okay.
All right?
That's good. Thank you.
Good.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a new public hearing for 115 Old Crescent Street.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me read that into the record and we'll start that one. Under the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission Stormwater Management Regulations, the West Bridgewater Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing the 7th of January 2020 in the McDonald Brown Conference Room, 65 North Main Street, for a general stormwater management permit requested by Everett and Eisenthmer in order to remove an existing old home and build a new single-family home with associated amenities at 115 Crescent Street. We're open.
Did you want to give a quick presentation
What are you doing?
and introduce yourself?
Bob Daly, Daly Construction. I represent Everett and Hyacinth Murray. They currently live over in Taunton. Everett has a very successful business. And he has purchased 115 Crescent Street. And he is planning to remove the old structure that's there. It's an old house and an old shed. Those were going to be removed, and he has a single-family home designed here. You guys have the plans, and hopes to relocate to West Bridgewater. The business is in Brockton, and it's only 5 minutes from his shop when he's over here. So, all in all, he's hoping to get into a nice little residential neighborhood and be part of this community.
What is the issue before us then?
So there aren't any, there are some wetlands way to the rear of the property, so it's outside the 100-foot buffer. But because they're disturbing 15,000 square feet or more, they need to do the stormwater management. And his plans are showing where the roof drains are being installed and the permit would be issued with those requirements plus a construction entrance and also erosion control along what's called Old Crescent Street to prevent any of the sediments from the construction site getting out into the drains in Crescent Street. So it's basically just a procedural thing. His engineers seem to have recognized that they would have to handle stormwater, so it was already shown on the plans, but I'll add a few more if the commission approves. I'll add a few more conditions, such as silt sack in the catch basin at the intersection of Stony Road and Crescent Street. There's 2 catch basins out there.
It looks to be a considerable increase in the impervious surface to the lot between the driveway and the 4-bedroom dwelling.
Yep.
And it also looks like you're removing a very large portion of the trees canopy that's on the property to put the septic system in.
Correct.
Any plans of replacing any of that? Because that's going to affect the stormwater runoff and what goes and gets shed to where.
We can do some vegetation replacement. The soil there is outstanding. You look at the PERC rates, it's sand and stone. It is
That's why the trees are happy.
And it's sloped perfect, and it's sloped towards no harm. It's well over 100 to 150 feet beyond, inside your buffer. So there's nothing.
Yeah, I know it's not something we can make you do. I'm just asking that if you.
Based on the conditions and the slope of the grades, even out at the street, is, and we certainly will put your
Road control?
the silt control. Do that all the time, standard. So that's nothing new. There was a 4-foot dry well design on those catch basins for the
Roofs?
the roof runoff, 4 of them at each corner of the home. So those were addressed. If you want to have something designed specifically, besides just a 4-foot or 6-foot stone dry well, we certainly will comply with a design of your liking.
I'll put it in the order, in the permit.
Okay.
Prior to the new regulations, what would have happened here? Nothing.
Nothing, it just would have got a building permit. And,
Right, okay.
All the roof drains would drain off into the road and or into the driveway and into the road and
Yeah.
not be addressed.
Well, that's a federal
That's right next to that house there.
regulations
No
filtering
backyard because of the
down.
wetlands.
Yeah.
You know that little
Yes,
that little beach
on
one?
Stony Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this one's like a historical house, I thought.
The, Paul is right, this is a old historic 1700 or something?
1750.
Yeah.
And the Historical Commission is meeting tomorrow night. I saw an email, I think it was tomorrow night or Thursday night. And they will discuss it, but I believe unless the town has money to buy it, it's just a formality type thing.
Sure.
Yeah, I have an email from them a few months back stating that they wanted some pictures, the right to see if there was any artifacts or anything of any value to them inside, which we grant them permission to check it out and do whatever they need to do prior to demolition.
Okay. I'm all set.
Anybody, any other questions? Audience, comments, questions? Right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll move, and I'll entertain a motion to issue a general stormwater permit with the amended items that John got.
And I shall make that motion.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll move.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a continued public hearing for 586 Manley Street, general stormwater management permit.
Familiar face for this again?
I'm back.
You go out
At
the door.
Forley's in East Bridgewater one
and
night.
come back in again.
Yeah. I had 4 of these in East Bridgewater one night. Not in a row either. All right. Evening again, everyone. Greg Driscoll of Jacobs Driscoll Engineering here tonight and presenting Mehdi Bedingia of MJM Construction. Did I get the name right? Yeah. Okay. I was going to mess that up. And this is the continued hearing, so my colleagues Amanda and Josh were here for the last meeting regarding the stormwater permit, and we have revised the plan since then and provided some additional information.
Where is that?
That's not first, the second batch he sent us. It's in that one, this is the last one. Yeah. Okay.
So we've reconfigured the erosion control around the work that will be done for the contractor yard. They'll be storing your equipment out there, parking.
Correct. Trucks, loaders, backhoes.
Out in that area. And what else? Oh, sorry. And the access drive from this area, in the back of the proposed building to the construction yard area. So those have been added to the plan throughout the discussion at the last meeting.
John, comments, questions?
I had a chance to look at the plans, and I don't have any issue at this point. They've addressed what we were looking for, so I would recommend closing and issuing a general stormwater permit.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
No.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I will entertain a motion to issue a general stormwater permit.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
All right.
Thank you.
That one was a lot. So, when he does the work, it's going to be okay, the wetland, and do the replication work on slope. We're going to be able to fill that, we have to have a partial on the replication work. So,
Okay.
so we already have the NOI for relocating this down into here.
What's left?
In that replication plan.
100 Beacon.
Does, we get a partial COC on the replication work before you can do anything here?
This is this one,
Is that how that works?
and that was the
Because we're not gonna
Oh.
get
tearing
until
down.
a couple of
That's done.
seasons of
Yeah,
that
that's
growing,
done.
right?
Right.
And we have people.
And being monitored, so.
So why don't you, while you have a chance,
Oh, it isn't?
No.
Okay, all right.
Actually, it is, right here.
Mr. Driscoll has a good question, and I think it deserves having the commission talk about it. So go ahead and explain. Just to remind everyone, this site originally had an approval for the isolated depression to be filled in and replicated.
Down in this area here, or over here, it was.
Yep. So, he has a question now on the logistics of doing this, so go ahead.
Yeah, so that notice of intent and order of conditions was issued for the previous landowner, who's now sold it to Manny, who wants to do his work up in here. So, at one point, how complete does the work need to be here before he can start?
Is that the one with the
filling that?
fountain?
Across the street.
No,
from
that's
it.
a-
the other side.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah, the fountain's up the.
I had to stop and think about that. Where was that?
So we need to have that all pretty much planted and ask for a partial COC before you can fill that in?
So, I guess,
Because we won't have a full COC until the monitoring.
There's really nothing in the depression for material that you're going to need or
No.
use to create the other.
No, but
I mean,
he wants to be able to stop doing
Right.
more development out, and he owns all this land back in here, he's not gonna just keep doing this up here. So, he wants to, we're gonna be working on the next phase at some point for him, so,
So
and he wants
si-
to do that, so he wants to start doing this work and have us work on the design for what's gonna happen in there after that's moved.
so let's say that this other part that we just looked at this evening wasn't even part of the equation. if they started the work that they have an order of conditions for, which is to fill in that depression, they could basically fill the depression and then start building the restoration area. So there's really no order of sequence.
Which comes first.
Right, okay.
The only, as...
It's just gonna be done within the period that the order of conditions
right.
is
So
valid for.
as Tim indicated, though, oftentimes when you're filling in a place, you use some of the soil from that place to help when you do the restoration in the other place.
Mhm.
So you might want to consider that rather than have them just fill it over and disregard it. It
Okay,
might
yeah.
have some good soils in there that you could use.
He's an
But-
excavation contractor, so he knows.
But I would say
over there.
that you would just go ahead and fill it in, start the work on the other side, or vice versa, and eventually you would get a certificate of compliance.
We wouldn't issue it unless it was done.
Until it's done, and
Yeah.
we've issued partials in the past,
Mhm.
and they get lost in the shuffle
Okay.
at the registry of deeds. Nobody ever pays attention to it. It was a partial, they just see it
Yeah.
as a complete,
Mm.
even though it doesn't say that, and so we wouldn't issue that. We would bond it if
Mhm.
necessary. But, and I just
Okay,
want
so
to
you
make sure
guys-
the commission all feels the same way on this.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we've done like partials on this type of work that, you know, the replication's done, but we know we're not gonna get full until the monitoring periods are up. If you don't want us to file for a partial once that part's done, and just go for the final in a couple of years.
As an example, this is part of the complex that has a solar array on the far northerly end of this property. And they had a replication area they had to create, and they had to put up a cash bond that we still have
Because they haven't.
to assure that the thing would survive. And they, sure enough, the first season, some of them did succumb to the weather, and they had to replant, but we didn't have to use the bond. So once they ask for the completion, I'll go out and I'll check to make sure those plants are still doing great, and then we can give them the money. So the same thing would happen here.
Okay.
Do we have a bond?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
We have the prerogative to go out of order, so I think at this point,
We might want to
100
talk
Beacon?
to 100?
100 Beacon Street? All right. Good evening.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, so we live in 100 Beacon Street, and we have trees in the backyard. We gotta cut them down, but we didn't know it was a wetland that we were supposed to cut it down. So we're asking permission if we can cut them down and clean it up, and we'll put grass on it. And I was wondering if that's okay with you guys.
This one came before us not too long ago with a septic upgrade, John, was it?
It was a couple of years ago, not a couple of years ago, probably, time flies, doesn't it?
It was in
2000,
more recent history.
I think it was around 2010. That, is there a date on that as-built?
Let's see. So let's see. "2010.
Oh.
Yep.
Usually I don't remember things that clearly, but,
End of 2010.
yeah. So, at that point, the
Additional docks.
post and rail
Yep.
fence that runs along the backyard was the limit of work, and everything beyond that was protected and not to be disturbed. So essentially what they've done is, without realizing this, because no one told them that, it was before we had signs to put up, and maybe there were signs, I don't know, but they could have fallen down. The new owner, who just bought it late in August, was it, or so?
August 15th.
Cutting down the trees, and I was passing by and saw the activity, and sent them a letter, and they came in to talk to me at the office, and so I asked them to come in and talk to the commission.
Which I also got a phone call questioning about it, which I asked John about, and he said, oh, they're coming in tonight. So I said, perfect timing. My question would be, is the post and rail fence still there? Or was that there when you moved in, or was it?
It was still there, yeah.
Okay.
Is it still up?
Yeah.
And part of the order of conditions originally was for the 10 blueberry bushes to be planted,
I remember that.
which hopefully they're still there.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think we cut them down, no.
They may or may not be.
Yeah.
How far
That one good
back
our
did you
neighbors,
cut? I mean,
Because both of our neighbors, we want to cut up to that length. John
So,
could go in and measure that. I don't know what's the length of that.
so if you looked at Google Earth, you'll see that both neighbors, which probably predated this particular lot, run far back, a lot farther back than where that post and rail fence is. And I explained that that was because this was a new house that was built in 2010-ish, and that they were subject to the regulations, the current regulations, and perhaps the other homes were a lot older, and there wasn't as much oversight on them as there is on this one.
So how far back, do we know how far back you cut?
roughly, I mean, because it looks like, can't really tell on this plan, but the wetland line looks,
It's right
what,
there.
about 30 feet from the back of the house?
So the post and rail fence was approximately 20 feet back from
Okay.
the back of the house. And everything else was brush and trees and woods the rest of the way. I have not gone onto the property. I stood at the street, took a few pictures, and then I sent the letter. So my estimate from looking at it from the street is it's about 100 feet or so beyond the post and rail fence.
Is that the 50?
No, that's the wetland line.
The-
They had no room from the back of the house.
Yeah.
If you look where the 20-foot line was,
Right.
that was where the wetland line was.
Hmm.
So
So when this house was built,
this house wouldn't have been probably built
that's right.
if
That's right.
the Wetland Protection Act and the town bylaw was in place to move it another 50 feet, would have put the wetland line by the town bylaw in the middle of the house. And therefore, they wouldn't have had enough depth to put the house in.
I guess, my own feeling is, because we've got issues, in my own area where I live, is that, it's a no-touch zone. And, if we set any precedents by allowing you to go forward and make it lawn, we're setting precedents that we may have to face again. So
Which is-
right now, without further information, I think you really gotta stop what you're doing.
Yep.
until-
And really, to
So,
create lawn area,
is
you're gonna
that
have to take stumps
recent
out,
enough?
which
Yeah,
is gonna be
yeah.
within
This is-
the
this
wetland.
is
It's
the-
not even within the 50 foot.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually in the
So,
wetland
yeah,
area,
yeah.
which
Oh.
by law,
Oh.
we're not allowed to disturb the wetland.
Period.
So by
Hey.
digging it out, you're even creating more of a problem. And where it was permitted 2010, it's fairly recent delineation line. I mean, I don't think it's gonna change much if we were to have it redelineated.
No.
I feel your plight. I think your realtor probably did you an injustice by not
Yeah,
letting you
we
know
didn't
that there
know
was.
at all. We didn't know at all.
Yeah,
Which isn't unusual.
yeah, it
It's
happens
not fair.
more often
Yeah.
than we like. That's why with anything recent, we require postings of markers.
Right, okay.
Doesn't mean they stay. A lot of times, somebody will pull them out and they disappear.
At least they were put in.
But at least we know they were put in,
Right.
and it's one more layer of protection.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of my position, that, I don't want to make an exception that could haunt us later on, too. Unless John has any thoughts on extenuating circumstances, but.
No, I just suggested that I had suggested that as the advisor to the commission, my advice would be that not to allow any more cutting, just
Yeah.
leave it the way it is and
Right.
that's it.
Right.
But I said that perhaps if he came in and talked with the commission, they might think differently, so I didn't want to.
No, and that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. You're in the wetlands, you're not even in the buffer zone, where we might think of a different way of approaching this, but where you're actually in the wetlands, I can't see where we can, allow any changes.
Anybody else, any comments? And there was this looks like, this would have been a recorded plan, which would have shown the line and the work done. So it's not like if somebody did a search
They wouldn't
at
have-
the registry that it wouldn't have shown up with a plan with a wetland line on it.
I mean, we see things like this all the time, unfortunately, and
So at this point, I would say issue the enforcement order with no more cutting and to leave it as is and do not disturb it.
yeah. Is the fence down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the fence is not down. No, the fence is not down.
Okay. You might want to just leave that. I mean, I don't know what kind of shape it's in, but.
Only other thing I will ask, does people want to require putting markers on the fence? I don't think we have to put posts in, but putting the medallions.
What
I
are
think
they,
that's our
little
standard.
stick-on
That's what
things?
we do.
Yeah, they're
I've
just a
never
little
seen
round
one.
medallion.
How do
They're
they
about
go on?
that big.
They nail
A
it.
screw or
Either
a
a
nail.
machine screw into PVC pipe or a nail would hold
Okay.
it.
Probably good idea. Probably a good idea to do that, because you could leave.
Yeah.
When the next person buys the house, we'd run into the same
Yeah.
issue, I mean.
There's no paperwork that follows that deed about the wetlands. There's no paperwork that follows the, no,
Not on this one.
yeah.
Require
on
3
some of them.
markers,
3 across, yeah.
3 across.
So we can't actually do nothing there.
No.
No.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to hire an engineer and a botanist and have them come in and survey it and look at the wetland line and see if by chance the last person that did it 9 years ago made a mistake and it's not where it really is, you could, but realistically, it's
It's not very likely.
not likely that
It
it's
would cost
going
your
to.
money and,
Yeah, that's true. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I know.
yeah, I know. The unpleasant parts of our job sometimes,
Yeah.
but.
Like Mo said, if it was the 50
Yeah.
foot and you had another 50, we could maybe figure out something, but where the wetland line literally was 20
Right.
feet off your back door,
Right.
Mm.
there's no real buffer. I mean, it's,
So we appreciate your coming in,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
rather than continuing.
Yeah, yeah,
Could
yeah.
be a whole different set of issues. So,
at least
we
this way
thank
here,
you for
you,
coming in. Yeah.
of course you can't use the land, but you can put the markers up and save yourself having to replant anything, just
It'll
let it
grow
come
in
back up.
again,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it'll all grow back in
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Um,
So the property taxes, that, I'm still paying for that, for the
Yeah.
wetlands?
Well,
There's no tax reduction on that?
Could ask for an abatement.
You could go to them and ask for an abatement.
Okay.
They may or may not grant
yeah,
one.
so you can't use it, so
Yeah,
can I get an
yeah, yeah.
abatement? Yeah, worth a try.
Mhm. Yeah, all right.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Thank you very
for
much.
coming.
Kelly, is that Farm Road?
What one?
Farm Road?
Yep. Farm Road? What do we want?
I'm Kelly Hurd. This is Jonathan Desjardins. We are here because we are dealing with a very angry neighborhood. It's been on Farm Road and Molly Lane. It's been a very long process dealing with the builder. Right now, of the utmost concern to everyone is the final house closed on December 31st, and there's still the open order of conditions. And we sent we sent a letter out, and I also talked to John, but I know all of the departments in the town got the letter from what I've been told. And we were actually asking for the certificate of occupancy to be held until the builder not only got the certificate of compliance for the order of conditions, but also finished all of these other various items that he hasn't completed. So I did see in the order of conditions that, well, let me back up for a second. So we're at the point right now where we know that there's now a policy in place that doesn't apply to us because our subdivision was begun before the policy went into place about, you know, requiring the builder to do certain things and finish the order of conditions. But now we're sort of at the point where we're asking ourselves, and we're asking you, what can we do to make sure this gets done? Because now that the last house is sold, I hope I'm wrong, but I have no faith whatsoever that he'll ever come back, to be honest with you, and finish anything. I saw that he has to submit reports and logs. I'm wondering, has he done that, and are you able to levy the fines against him at this point, and what are the fines? I just am not very well versed on the fines.
The only thing I'm familiar with is the ongoing issues over there that I've been sort of tracking as I see it on the emails, but I don't think we've had any jurisdictional.
So, just to expand upon what Kelly has mentioned, the development received an order of conditions to allow the road construction and drainage
Right.
and detention basins to eventually discharge to the wetland.
Right.
And the builder proceeded to get lot releases and build the houses, and did actually submit or had a representative submit periodic reports on the erosion control maintenance for the project. And we did have to get after the developer to straighten out some of the issues up there, and they did. But it became clear as he got farther along in the build-out process that they weren't going to be giving or asking for a certificate of compliance on the actual road drainage, which means now that every, because it goes with the land, means that there's a potential for every of the 22 owners up there, having a meticulous attorney doing a title find that there's this outstanding order of conditions for the roadway that has nothing to do with any of those individual lots, and say we are going to hold up the closing, or at least it becomes an issue that might mess up closings, possibly not allow refinancing for a pool or an addition or whatever. And it puts the burden on the homeowners association to get the certificate of compliance. And so on behalf of the commission, I asked that the building commissioner not issue the certificate of occupancy for the last building that was being sold up there. And the town rallied together as much as they could to get the developer to assure us that they were going to be able to complete the road as-built and get a request in for a certificate of compliance and record it at the registry. And I received assurances from the engineer who's been hired by the developer that he is going to make sure that happens. It's just his word, his professional word to me. I have nothing other than an email that we can hold him to. And so it brings up this issue that I think we've solved by requiring now as one of the special conditions that in order for them to start building, they need to give us a cash surety equivalent to what we believe would be the cost of doing a complete as-built by an engineer for a subdivision, so that if a developer runs off, we have the money in the account that we can hire an independent engineer to go out and do the work and pay him for it, and protect the individual lot owners of a subdivision in the future. But we don't, that wasn't in place for their development. And Kelly brings up some issues or questions about the stormwater pollution prevention plan that was approved as part of this development. And I've come to the conclusion that the basins are functioning properly, and that their only obligation would be to do maintenance from this point on. Everything else that either was or was not done, we can't hold them responsible for. So that when they are complying with the maintenance requirements of this stormwater basin system, they would only have to do the yearly maintenance that is prescribed, which basically boils down to keeping the berms free from trees and saplings from growing, and keeping the berms accessible by mowing once in the spring, once in the fall, or as needed, basically. And then if there's any catastrophic events where the system would be inundated with sediments, the outfall pipes might need to be, where they go into the basins, might need to be cleaned. Or the catch basins, if one of the lots had a major flooding due to a burst water main or something, that would have to be cleaned. But other than that, it's just a routine, very simple maintenance at this point.
Are you with homeowners association?
Well, we haven't officially taken over. We're at that like transition stage, so.
Oh, I know, I live in a community
Yeah,
where
so
we took it over.
We're not there yet, and this is why we wanted to, one of the reasons why we wanted to come to you guys and see what's gonna happen, what's gonna be enforced, what's not gonna be enforced. I mean, I guess one of the big issues is during the entire project, the majority of it, the drainage infrastructure wasn't protected. No silt sacks, no hay bales.
Right.
We have pictures going back showing that it wasn't protected. So now we're gonna be taking that over, and yeah, okay, we have to take care of the maintenance in the future, but what about the maintenance that hasn't been taken care of?
Right.
And this guy's gone, there's no,
Are those catch basins already half filled with sediment because
They've
they
got-
weren't
they've-
protected during
they've
construction?
got to be, and that's where our frustration lies, is, how can this guy, basically, he's gonna disappear, we're gonna get stuck with something, and what, the order of conditions and everything else clearly states he was supposed to protect everything.
Yeah.
And he didn't, so now,
Did
who
he sign?
has jurisdiction and who can enforce something on him, I guess is the question.
And did you say they were working? They're draining? They're doing what they're supposed to do, or?
Well, the basins, the stormwater basins are, but Jonathan, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned that the catch basins might have silt and sediment filling up the sump, the 4-foot sump that's in the bottom of the basin. I think this shows, and I don't think we can, there's nothing we can do to go after them. We thought we had the possibility of not letting the CO, certificate of occupancy, be issued for the last house, except for the building inspector provided me with 2 different sections of the building code that says that he cannot withhold it if the structure itself is safe and satisfactory to him. Any of these other issues, such as owed taxes, outstanding order of conditions, those kind of things are not pertinent to his duty to issue the certificate of occupancy, and it's very clear in the state building code that it's that way. He has basically no right to hold it up. And it got to a point where the attorney for the developer was threatening to go to the courts and getting an injunction that, or a order that would order the building commissioner to issue it. And so eventually we had to succumb to that threat and have it issued.
That's typically what he does, threaten.
But I think it points out that with the amount of oversight that was provided was insufficient, and that future developments, because apparently, and I don't want to sound like I know this for a fact, but apparently the town does not have an inspector that watches the whole construction phase.
No.
And perhaps the commission should have a independent consultant that's paid from a 53G account to do the monitoring, construction monitoring. And maybe it might have to be a joint effort between planning board and
Yeah,
conservation.
because we only have certain.
And that way, the developer puts money into a fund, the consultant working on behalf of the town makes sure that the erosion control protection is inserted into those catch basins, that anything that's not going right on a weekly basis, a daily basis, whatever, is being handled as it's needed. And we just don't have the staff to be able to do that. So we do put a lot of, the order of conditions required the developer to have an erosion control specialist send me reports on a periodic basis, and he was responsible for it, but as we found out, there were times where we got the reports and they weren't necessarily accurate.
In this case?
So are there actually reports?
There are.
And who wrote these up?
Wally?
So they're submitting inaccurate reports?
They could have been, I mean,
So there could be a
we'd have to,
potential.
he
But
was.
when did he give you these? I'm sorry.
They were coming in by email on a regular basis,
Okay.
and then all of a sudden they stopped towards the end. So my assumption was that that was when there was paving and that kind of thing.
Because there were a lot of other issues going on there. It isn't
Yeah, we
just-
have, we're
yeah.
just, I mean, I know you guys have your jurisdiction on
Right,
this, we
right.
wanna talk to you about. You know, we're just, you know, it's a private road, we're essentially, as the HOA, we're gonna own this drainage infrastructure. He
Yeah.
didn't follow an order of conditions that was issued by the town, there has to be something that can happen to enforce.
I know with a lot of the subdivisions, especially if it's gonna eventually be a town road, the planning board retains money from the developer at the very beginning to make sure that it's finally completed. I
Right.
don't know if this one had that requirement because it was
It has some.
some.
So-
They released a ton of money back. God only knows why.
Okay,
Because
that was my question, was the planning board
Yeah.
should have funds enough to complete
They
the
should, but they
as-built and
don't.
make sure that the plan is, the design worked and it was built to the specifications. That's
Right.
why they retain that money until
Right.
the project's completed. If they released money ahead of time, that would be a question to go to them and say, where's the money and why isn't the plan and the spec done the way it was supposed to be?
Right, and we, obviously, the same conversation we're having with you, we've had with them. Basically, what they told us is there's about $25,000 left in the bond, which essentially they're saying the as-bills are gonna get done, but other than that, we don't know what's gonna get done. It's a giant punch list, there's a lot of things, this $25,000 isn't enough. And the way I understood it was they had to make a concession was, we're gonna release this money so the road gets topped. And that was the only way the road was getting topped, is they released that money, and it's
Yeah.
not a good
It
situation
is,
for us
yeah.
as
Yeah.
homeowners. Yeah, we have a road that's complete, yes, the infrastructure's put in, but it wasn't maintained during construction, which means, you know, everything is filled with silt at this point. You know, just nothing
Before
was
you
protected.
take over as an association, can't you demand that that be done?
If he dissolves his company and disappears,
Yeah,
You know,
we've
we
asked
said-
for records before.
See, we went through
they
that,
don't
but
have
we had a huge punch list, but this particular builder
Yeah.
accommodated us and
Yeah.
did all the punch lists.
but
But
that
I
was
get,
because he was building he was finished Pearl Road to build the current one, I mean, if you're
Yeah.
referring, yeah, so I mean, he had to, otherwise he wasn't
but
gonna
I
be able to.
understand your dilemma, yeah, he dissolves the company.
Right, I mean, he set up an LLC for this subdivision and there's nothing.
Which I'm sure he did.
Yeah, he did, I mean, he's smarter than it looks, but, we're just,
wondering if there are fines that can be levied or anything that can be done. 'Cause, I mean, I'm sure there's supposed to be a SWIP that was filed. We looked for it, we couldn't find it.
I didn't see it on the EPA's website.
Yeah, so there's no, I mean, who has jurisdiction of that? I mean, the project would require a SWIP to be filed.
Didn't the builder also, wasn't he required to sign an affidavit saying that he understood everything he had to do before the order was released?
Yep, they
And then it's
routinely
just if
sign
you
them.
don't
You
finish it,
give
it
them
doesn't
any-
matter. Like,
Any concern.
I don't know.
Well, I'm not an attorney, man, I'm not sure how you could get to him
Yeah.
with this LLC, but maybe there is a way that you can pierce, through to his other assets.
So
I don't know.
The order of conditions is issued, who is it issued to?
To the
The LLC?
Yeah, the LLC.
And then when it's signed by the
Him.
LLC.
So I think what the benefit of having them come in and talk to the commission is that there's an obvious problem here, and in order to prevent future ones, and we can't really help them out other than saying you're only going to be responsible for the maintenance of the basins from this point forward.
Mhm.
Everything else is typically a catch basin does collect sediments.
Sure, we have them on our property too, and
I
we have
haven't
to clean
seen
them
that
out.
I haven't seen that the pipe system itself is loaded with sediments enough to show signs of it washing out into the basins. Have you?
And it's not really.
Yeah. So I'm not afraid of the fact that there might be tons of sediments in the piping systems itself. I do believe that the catch basins would have 4 feet of sediments in the sump of the catch basin, which is why they have a sump.
Right.
And every one of the town catch basins are the same. They have to clean them out periodically.
We hope.
Right.
I know a few that are filled to the top with sediment and not functioning, but.
But it becomes our problem. Like, instead of having to clean it in, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we're gonna be stuck right off the bat of having to clean the system, because at the end of the day, if it starts failing, it's gonna come back on us and we have to deal with it.
I think our order of conditions is 4 times a year we have to get in there. and look.
During construction, right?
No, theirs
Ongoing.
is ongoing.
Yeah.
So that's like fairly,
Standard.
no, I was
No.
gonna say it's fairly extreme.
I think
I'm not thinking once every 4 years, maybe.
Looking at the order of conditions, I believe that's what it said, I have to double check it. but-
No, I believe you. It's just sometimes the orders get written and they're not practical.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a problem for
Going forward,
the next
certainly.
subdivisions
Yeah.
that come in when they do. And if we feel sorry for them and say there's nothing we can do and then just let it slide and everybody, all the regulatory boards and commissions forgets about it for the next one,
Yeah.
then we're gonna have new people coming in at that point with the same problem that they have.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I think the town needs to have an open discussion on construction oversight, and it shouldn't be a cost to the town, it should be a cost to the developer.
Right.
They should have perhaps a better bonding estimate made. If 25,000 is left and it's not sufficient to do what's necessary on their punch list, then it should have been higher. And you can't be afraid to say to a developer, we're putting this amount of money in to protect the residents. You're
Sure.
selling these
Sure.
properties to our future residents, and therefore, we need to be able to protect them. And we don't have this insurance policy to pay them. You do, and you're gonna have to provide that, or you don't build in our
Sure.
town.
Sure. How you implement that, I'm not sure.
So that's why I think we need a discussion.
No
amongst
doubt about it, yeah,
The different,
no doubt.
because we can each do our own thing and then hope that everything works fine,
Yeah.
and we find out that that doesn't work.
So back to, I mean, so you're basically on your end, there's not much or anything you can do. But what about the fact on the SWIP that wasn't filed, that by law, that was required to be filed for the project?
The EPA could
Yes,
probably,
but that's what I'm asking, is who, that doesn't fall back, who, you know, that doesn't come back to the town of West Bridgewater Conservation, that goes back to the state, correct?
I'd have to look into that, because I don't know who.
So I know it's a big deal, I mean, if the SWIP's not filed on a project and then it's not followed at all, I mean, basically your order of conditions covers most of the things that would be in the SWIP. But he didn't do those, and then he didn't file a SWIP period, so, I mean, it's just like blatant not following the rules.
Well, I've heard cases where the stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is the SWIP is what he's referring to, wasn't followed or wasn't filed properly, and the EPA has fined the developer. But if it's an LLC.
There you go, we're back to the, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
this
they
is
can
what
pi-
he
Maybe
does,
they
though.
can pierce the corporate veil, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
You know, we know we're homeowners, we spent a lot of money on houses, and now we're, you know, we spend a lot of time trying to get this stuff done, and it's like beating our heads against the walls.
Have you had to spend any, well, you don't have an association yet. so
Not yet,
You
not
haven't
yet.
spent association
Right.
money.
Has it conveyed
Right,
the
we've
land?
been paying into it, we have no idea where it's going.
So-
That's-
Probably went into building the last house, to be honest.
That's tricky business.
Yeah, so we get, I mean, the way the HOA is written is we take over when the final house is sold and all bonds are released from government agencies, which, I mean, when the planning board signs off, then we can take over. But I don't know if we're ever gonna even get to that point, because, I mean, $25,000 is not a lot of money for what needs to get done. Maybe we should walk away, who knows?
Be nice if the as-built came in and
I
then you would have to deal with that and the 25 could actually go to the punch list items.
Right,
and-
right. I'm sure, I'm confident that Silver will do the as-built. That
Right.
part will get done, which is good, but it doesn't help with
With the rest of the.
the infrastructure issues. So,
I just have, so I don't know anything about taxes, admittedly, but we are, as a neighborhood, spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on taxes, but we're not a public way. I mean, is there any way we could talk to a different department in the town about, like, some of our tax dollars going to this? 'Cause, I mean, we're still a private way, and we're, quite frankly, just getting screwed by the builder who signed an affidavit saying that he understood everything
Sure.
that he had to do. I just don't know how it works. I don't know if anyone can provide any insight on, I'm assuming the answer is
I
no,
can't.
but.
That's why I think it's important to have a discussion with all the people involved, because what you bring up about taxes is important for the assessors to have some input as to what they can and can't do to help out, what the planning board can do, or what they need to do, and what the commission needs to do, or the Board of Health. Yeah, I think we need to talk about this, because it's affecting
22 houses.
22 houses.
And I mean, independently, we've talked to almost every department at this point, and, they've caught issues, and, some issues have been addressed, but, I mean, there's a lot of we can't do anything. We have nothing we can do, but I mean, talking about 22 houses and.
Yeah, I'm happy that, like, people in the future will be helped, obviously, but, when
So
you spend your
bonds
life
are
savings on a
issued
house, you want it to be done.
Individually, but not enough to cover the whole.
No, and it's the, the duration of the project. I think he got approval on the project 3-4 years ago. Prices 3-4 years ago are different than they are now.
The asphalt went up tremendously.
I just have a personal question. What would make you want to move on a private way? Why would you purchase it?
I didn't, but
Just the lack of understanding what it meant?
No, not lack of understanding. We love the house.
Yeah.
And we figured that it would eventually become a public way. I'm not really concerned at this point about the fact that it's a private way. I thought, now I'm a real estate attorney. I actually became a real estate attorney after we moved in. Yeah, but yeah, it's really fun. But I mean, I honestly thought that the town would have something in place to make a builder, like, taking a builder's word for it. I'm just like, oh my God, like, how did this happen for so many years?
This just makes me think of that the private way that just we voted on. So that, you know, I mean, you pay taxes, I'm not telling you something you don't know, and you don't get anything for it.
Right.
I just don't understand the thought process behind it. I don't think it's fair, and we just voted on a way.
Oh, I was
to
there.
now. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I was
saw
there for
that.
the
So I was curious to think, you know, I don't see the appeal other than the house.
Well, this
that
is
you
what
like, the house.
a lot
Right.
of subdivisions are doing now too.
Yeah. I was hoping we could not do that for our town. I just don't see where it benefits any of our people to live on a private way. Where does
No, I don't think it
your tax dollar
does.
work for you there? It doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, so
It helps to the school, but other than that.
yeah, and
The street I live on isn't an approved street to begin with, so we
Right.
could never go for it to be
Right, and that's a
public.
different
Right.
story, but.
Totally
our
different,
street-
yeah.
Our street is built to,
Yeah.
you know, it's a regular
Right.
road.
No,
And it's
22
funny
houses,
because
that's a
everyone
lot
else
of
in the town
houses.
doesn't want to vote for it to
Right.
become public, and we're
Yeah.
like, we're paying your taxes,
Exactly.
man.
I was curious because 22 people, there's kids there, there's buses that aren't going to go down to pick up the kids.
Right.
It's just I just don't see it.
And
I
your-
see where it benefits the
Your
town.
driveways aren't finished yet?
No, that's another
Yeah,
big.
we pretty much accepted they're not getting done.
Just
And
like-
I know the last house that just closed on, they gave them a credit, like took
Yeah.
money off for their driveway, because they know they're not coming back.
And you're talking, you know, to finish each driveway is $3 grand, and, you know,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money
Yeah.
that we all have to come up with on something, you know, you don't know. You think that the guy's gonna do what he's supposed to do.
Right.
So, the order will just remain open until,
Until Silva finishes his as-built and submits a request for us to issue, and then it gets recorded. And hopefully that'll be
Right.
done so that it protects the 22
Right.
lot owners.
Now, you were gonna ask a question about,
Yes.
were there individual orders of conditions issued, or did it just go under one?
All right, so I think there was only 2 lots that were within 100 feet of the wetlands, and both of them were submitted, one of them was submitted as a request for determination because there's only a small section of the 100-foot buffer being graded for the yard, so it didn't require an order of condition. And then the other one, they kept everything out of the 100-foot buffer, and it might be your house, I'm not sure.
lot 6. I'm lot 6.
I don't remember. And so I had to sign off on the building permit because it wasn't in our jurisdiction. So
Right.
even though it had the 100-foot buffer on the lot, it didn't affect the site development. So I thought we had order of conditions on at least 2 houses, and it turns out we had none. We had a,
Okay.
Well, we often see these builders return
Yeah.
at some point or another,
Something you
so.
would think,
maybe not in this
I don't
town.
know.
Yeah.
He's
I think they're
definitely-
trying to just go through every town in Massachusetts until they get kicked out.
Yeah.
And then I noticed also in the order of conditions something about the gutters or something being inspected for each house. I'm assuming that didn't
I
happen.
think each
but-
one of the houses had to have
Yeah, they
downspout
did.
drains.
Yeah. Were those inspected? Do
No.
we know if those were
They're
inspected
not
ever?
inspected, they put them in, I mean. I don't
Yeah.
think they-
Just
they're not gonna check it.
downspouts?
Yeah, just downspouts into crushed stone as far as I know.
Okay.
It's nothing special about it.
And then this is my last question, just kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, but, so behind my house in the conservation easement, there's a really big tree that I think could be concerning at some point, that if it fell, could hit my house. So how does that work in terms of if it became a dangerous situation because it's in the easement?
So residents with similar problems have contacted the office. I go out and I flag the tree that you're, or sometimes a couple of trees, that you're concerned about, make an assessment on it based on my experience, and then if it happens to be where I think it's not necessary to come down, you could get an arborist to say, oh, I'm an expert and I know that will come down, then I would go ahead and acquiesce to that person's expertise. But in most cases, the commission allows me to sign off on it. We take pictures, and then I go back after it's done and make sure that the 1 tree or 2 trees that we said was okay to cut down didn't turn into 26. 'Cause
Right.
that has
We
happened.
I'm
we
sure it
did
does.
them in our property, a few, and I believe we just, I mean, they had the cranes over the houses and took it out, but we didn't, there was no stump grinding.
Right.
Right, you just
Like
leave the
that.
stumps
Yeah.
flush to the ground or as low as you can.
So
Okay.
it can be done, and it's not a very difficult process. So.
Okay.
Not a
Just wondering
permit
how that
needed or
worked.
something like that.
Wish we had solutions for you folks, really do.
Yeah.
As
No, and I know you
homeowners
guys are in a
ourselves.
tough spot with,
Yeah.
you know, not being, I'm sure no one expected,
That's why
the
going
situation to be
forward,
this horrible.
we've
but-
gotten tighter on a lot of the developers because of that
Mhm.
reason. And I mean, a lot of times we're asking for bonds now, even just for single houses to get lawns established. And we're making them leave money behind until it's done.
Yeah.
Which is right anyways. I mean,
Sure
it's
it
just-
is.
It's part of the whole.
It's
the
a
whole
business
process.
arrangement,
It's-
that's right.
It's you know, it's amazing he got as far as he did with nobody thinking that he was gonna do what he's done.
Well, he was the developer for Pearl Road.
Yes.
And
That turned
while
out,
Pearl Road was getting towards its completion, they purchased this adjacent land called the farm.
right.
And so quite a bit of the work that was done for Pearl Road seemed to be going along fine. And so I think there was this false trust built.
Sure.
And then when there's no additional new subdivision being proposed in town, the I could give a care type of attitude may have crept in.
This Pearl Road is fine.
There were a couple issues, but they were dealt with. And
It is fine now. I know everyone on that street does
I'm sure you
hate
do, yeah.
the builder, but I think they're fine now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be possible to get a copy of the signed order of conditions and the logs?
Yeah. So with a signed
You'd
order?
have something.
Yeah, whatever he signed when he
Affidavit?
The
obtained it,
affidavit.
whatever the document is that he signed and who signed it, and then a copy of the stormwater monitoring report.
Okay. I'll look them up for you.
That'd be great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Frustrating.
Yes. But on to the proposal you have about going forward. I mean, I think it's something we have to really look into. All right.
Dan, what are you here for?
Well, I was gonna catch you after the meeting about AgCom stuff.
Oh, okay. Then I'll get this moving. Holmes's Hill Outdoor Classroom request. This is their closing ceremony that comes up. for-
Yes, periodically, and it's at the fire pit at Holmes Hill. And so there's a permission form in the signatures for approving that they can do that.
Just need you.
Yeah. Anybody questions? Entertain a motion to approve use of Holmes's Hill.
Make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, we have update 426 East Center Street.
In the documents I sent you, ET Engineering sent us a letter saying that they are currently working on the project and need at least another month.
What is it they're doing again? Just,
So this is the site on
Yeah.
East Center Street that the sludge is being dumped. So ET Engineering's been hired along with another surveyor who is going to be doing a site plan and showing where the wetlands are out at the property and coming in with a site plan. And they're so busy that they need at least another month before they can get close to giving us a plan. So I'm recommending that we grant them another month and see how it goes.
okay.
From what I hear, all the engineering companies are straight out.
Right. Not sure I mean, the sludge is there, right?
Yes, it's there. and
Question is,
It's not going anywhere.
No more is coming in.
No
Yeah.
more is coming in, apparently.
We have ORAD for, that's just signatures.
ORAD is for that wetland delineation that was done up off of Ash Street
Yeah.
Extension.
133 Brooks Place, certificate of compliance.
That is we have a $1,500 bond for the germination of grass because when I did my inspection, it was just bare soil, and it'll probably stay that way for quite a while until we get some warm weather.
when they purchase a bond, what are the mechanics? They pay just a small fee for that bond, or they have to actually place the cash?
We ask for the cash.
Okay.
But there are insurance bonds that companies will issue, and so say you wanted to bond it for $2,000, they might have a premium charge of, let's say, $100. And we find my experience over the years has been that sometimes insurance companies go under. They don't have the funds to pay you, and so you end up walking away. So the cash is the only way.
So we only do cash?
So we take a check that goes into the town treasurer.
Sure.
It sits there in an account until we release it, we being the commission release it, and I send them a letter saying it's okay to send the money back to Mr. or Mrs. Doe.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Then I will entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance with a bond for
Brooks?
133 Brooks Place.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Moved. Let's sign that one. And then we have request for certificate of compliance for 265 West Center Street.
I've done the inspection, and the grass is growing out there, so I recommend issuing without a bond.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to issue certificate of compliance for 265 West Center Street without a bond.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Right. Anybody else have anything else? I think that's it, except for signing
That's the maintenance agreement for
the copier
the copier machine. 113, is it $113?
and 40 cents.
Okay.
Gotta get that 40 in, though.
Anything else?
I think that's
I
it.
think that's it.
It's not on the agenda or anything, but just an update that I saw just recently on River Street, property called, what we're calling Pratt's Landing. The Eagle Scout that wanted to put a kayak launching dock on that river received the money that we returned
Awesome.
from
Oh, we
the
did.
Taunton River Watershed Alliance, I think it's called, or, no, Taunton River Wild and Scenic Council approved him to get that money returned. And so he is in the process of getting a hold of the company that sells it. And hopefully in the spring, we'll have a canoe launch there that's open for the public.
Excellent.
And that's it.
There's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Move second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So done.
Okay. Have some sharing issues? There's 15 minutes over? Cool. It's done after.